Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded event for the June 2015 examination for Unit B1 GCSE Biology. To help you get the most out of this feedback, you may want to have the following documents handy, as we will refer to them during the session. Here are the aims and objectives of today's session. You will receive feedback on national performance of candidates in Unit 1 of the June 2015 examination series. Consider the variation of candidates' performance on different questions, and possible reasons why. Look at the examiner's report. Address common issues. The next 3 slides will look at question 2B of the higher tier paper. The question asks for the effect of a build-up of nitrates and phosphates in the environment. The answer should reflect the candidate's understanding of the process of eutrophication, with detail linking the various stages following the overgrowth of algae. This candidate was able to give sufficient detail for all 3 marks to be awarded. This answer was confused and incorrect. Although the candidate had an idea about the nitrates causing an overgrowth of algae, they incorrectly linked this directly to the oxygen depletion in the lake. They did not include the stages leading up to this, and thus could only be awarded 1 mark. In this question, successful candidates had a sound understanding of eutrophication and were able to link the consequences at each stage together. Gave sufficient detail to the question. It was not enough to just state that plants die. They needed to convey why, because they could not get enough light for photosynthesis. The next 4 slides concern Question 4, Part B2, which was an interpretation from the diagram, needing details of genetic inheritance to be given to explain how cystic fibrosis can be inherited. This candidate was able to use the correct genetic terms, stating that 2 recessive alleles needed to be inherited in order for cystic fibrosis to be inherited. In this case, the candidate correctly described homozygous recessive inheritance, which also answers the question. This candidate did not answer the question about cystic fibrosis, but referred back to Huntington's disease from the previous question. As the crossed-out work had been replaced, this is not marked. In this question, successful candidates correctly described the inheritance of cystic fibrosis, were able to use the correct genetic terms to describe the inheritance, referred to alleles as the unit of inheritance rather than genes. Look at this example of an answer to question 6C on the higher tier paper. Using the mark scheme, decide what mark you think should be awarded and why. This is a point at which you can pause the video to look at the whole question on page 7 of the question paper and the mark scheme, and decide on the mark and why. This was a very good answer, and many candidates produced answers of this quality. This question is placed into a mark band in order to award the marks, and this question addressed all the marks required for Band 3. The quality of written communication is good, and the answer is clear and correctly linked ideas together, so 6 marks can be awarded. Note that not all the indicative content is needed to award full marks. Successful candidates were able to correctly describe the control of glucose regulation, explain the mechanisms of raising and lowering blood glucose concentrations, correctly identify the body organs involved in these processes. This question is from the foundation tier paper and is assessing the math skills and the ability of the candidate to understand the concept of body mass index. This candidate correctly substituted into the equation and showed their working for 2 marks. In this response, the candidate was unable to correctly complete the calculation. The candidate showed the correct working, but the answer was incorrect, so 1 mark could be awarded. Candidates who did less well were not able to apply the mathematical skills effectively, did not square the height on the bottom of the equation, made a mistake in the calculation but did not show their working, so lost both marks. The next 4 slides are about question 6b, the 6-mark question on the foundation paper. A common issue was candidates not being able to state 2 other parasites and give a good description of their method of feeding on the host. This candidate gave a good description of the tapeworm, but the second parasite they mentioned was the flea, which was given at the start of the question. In this case, the candidate gave 2 examples, so was awarded mark band 2 for 4 marks. They did not give the detail of the parasite-host relationship in the detail needed for mark band 3. Less successful candidates mixed up mutualistic relationships and parasitic relationships. Repeated information given in the question about fleas being parasites. Did not give sufficient detail about the parasite-host relationship. Successful candidates were able to describe the role of the host and the parasite. Give 2 examples of parasites and their hosts. Describe in detail how the parasite lived off the host. The next 2 slides are about question 3b, which is a 4-mark question on the higher tier paper. You may want to pause and look at the question and the associated mark scheme before embarking on this activity. Marks were awarded on this question for the logical pathway through the reflex arc. Note that not all stages need to be included, but the flow must be correct to award the marks. This candidate scored all available marks, as they managed to give a clear pathway from receptors to effectors, including the role of the relay neuron in the CNS. Note that the motor neuron was missed out, but the candidate still gained 4 marks, as the arc was correctly described. Candidates lost marks here because they were unable to give the flow of the reflex arc, were unable to identify the relay neuron in the spinal cord, mixed up effectors and receptors, mixed up sensory and motor neurons, believed that the brain controlled the action. Statistics information. Explanation of GCE and GCSE reform. Thank you.